Hello and welcome to the Mike's DIY Tips channel on YouTube. I'm Mike, and in this video I'm going to show you my second collection of tool improvisations. This is where you're trying to get on with your job and you find you haven't got a vital tool. There are ways around it, and this video hopefully will show you one or two new ideas. My first demonstration of improvisation relates to cutting through a nail which is holding two pieces of wood together. Now this represents a garden fence post and a piece of edge framing for a garden fence panel that you want to remove, but you can't take the nail out, so the only other thing is to cut through the nail with a hacksaw. Now this is a proprietary handle for this very purpose, to grip a hacksaw blade safely. But if you haven't got one of those, but you have got a hacksaw blade, you can wrap the blade, as I've done here, with a piece of towel or other robust rag. You arrange the hacksaw blade so that the teeth cut on the push stroke, although there are some occasions when you might find it better to cut on the pull stroke. Keep the hacksaw blade straight, don't push too hard, otherwise it'll bend and snap. This shows you how to improvise a clamping device to grip something small and not very thick. This is a piece of metal, and basically we've got two identical pieces of wood screwed together with wood screws, and just loosen the screws and we can take it out. So the reason for clamping the piece of metal would be to cut it or bend it or drill it, and you can put that into a vise and grip it like that. Also, instead of a piece of thin metal like that, we can put a screw in. You might want to shorten this screw. It might be a sort of screw that fixes a knob onto a cupboard door. So what we've got now is a couple of extra big holes to accommodate the screw head like that. And then when we screw that together, that grips the screw tightly so that you can cut it. If the screw isn't long enough to go that way, you can go that way, and a lot more screw will be sticking out, like that. And we're not restricted to metal. We can also grip something like this piece of hardwood. So we can grip the hardwood. You could go a little bit thicker, and because this means that that gap is tapering, to get a better grip here, it would be better to put a piece of similar thickness packing in there. So now that gap is parallel, which means that the grip there is much more intense to keep this in place. I've got two improvisations going on here. First of all, the piece of wood with a screw there and a screw there is fixing the board down onto the saw stool so that we can work on the edge. Instead of cutting with a handsaw, you could be doing it with a jigsaw, and the edge of my piece of wood then acts as a straight edge for the jigsaw. And if you carefully measure that distance there from your cut line to the edge of the board and make sure it marries up with that distance on your jigsaw, that distance there, 31mm from the edge to the edge of the blade, then you can cut along there very safely and get a nice straight line. What we've got set up here is a portable drill press powered by my mains electric drill. The beauty of these machines is that they will consistently drill a perfectly vertical hole, and if you want to drill a series of holes like that, then by using a guide at the back you will consistently drill on your set drilling line. The construction of my improvised drilling guide is a piece of wood which happens to be white painted. It's got a screw there and a screw there, quite close to the base plate of the drill press. All that those screws are doing is clamping this down tight onto there. Now you might wonder what these are. They're effectively a little ledge coming out from underneath this piece of wood, and so that is level with that, is level with that. So when you're working with, say, a short piece of wood, you're not in danger of the wood falling down like that because it's supported here. The procedure I'm going to show you now is particularly useful and preferable if you've got to drill a lot of components all the same. What you do, you set it up for one and then the rest will follow suit. So what I've done here, I've put a piece of decorator's masking tape along my specimen piece of wood. I've marked on it where I want the holes, and so then I can use that to mark my straight edge guide at the back. So if that's where my first hole is going to go, I've marked the end of the piece of wood there and labelled it end. Then I drill another hole which will be there and put another mark here and label it hole, so that I don't get confused between end and hole. Then I just push through again, drill a hole, and so on. No markings on this one. So those marry up, and we can do the same with the other pieces of wood. While just looking at the drill press, it has 4 holes in the base plate which enable you to normally screw it to a wooden bench, but often I like to do it this way. I've got the base screwed to a nice block of wood which goes into the vise like that, and when I don't want the drill press for the time being, I can lift it out and put it down somewhere out of the way. The improvisation I'm showing you now is a simple way to make wooden dowel pins or alter the size of them. Got a piece of scrap steel angle with a suitable hole drilled in. In this case it's 10mm to make a 10mm wooden dowel. What you do, you get a piece of wood that's roughly the shape of what you want, and then you drive it through the hole like this. So that's good enough. Now what I've also done is used a cold chisel. Now this is the sort of chisel that you use to break brick or concrete, and just hit it on the edge of the hole all the way round, and that bruises the hole, forces some bits of metal in, and what that does then is creates grooves in the wooden dowel. To prepare that piece to make a dowel, you need to find a straight grain piece of wood, cut it and shape it like that, down to roughly the size of dowel that you want, and then cut it to the length you want before driving it through. Now the easy way actually is to buy long lengths of doweling to the size that you want, and then all you've got to worry about is cutting them off to length and putting the grooves in. Now the grooves are important for the gluing process. If you drive a dowel down a hole full of glue, you're in danger of bursting the host wood. But the grooves allow the glue to come up and not cause any damage. Now, I'm not suggesting that you want to go into the production of dowels using this method. It's too slow and cumbersome, but it would enable you to get out of difficulty if you are 3 or 4 dowels short to finish the job. Complete with grooves. Now here's something quite different. If you've ever had a go at printing out and binding together a little storybook or a report or information booklet, you'll know that it's difficult to get the edges smooth, particularly this edge. So I'm going to show you a simple way of doing it using carpentry tools. So I'm going to demonstrate trimming the top edge of this little book. I've got 2 pieces of nice square-edged hardwood fastened with 2 screws, and the distance between the screws must accommodate the longest part of the book. I've got the book very tightly gripped there by tightening these screws, with just a tiny bit of the paper edge sticking up. So now I'm going to put it in the vise, and using a sharp plane, and as you can see, it's taken the paper and a little bit of the wood as well, but that's a nice smooth edge to the book. Let's imagine that you've got to do a little bit of wall tiling, and that means you've got to use an adhesive like this, which you put on with an applicator like this. It's a piece of bendy plastic with coarse teeth and fine teeth. But let's suppose you've lost this, you don't know where it is, and you want to get on with the job. So now I'll show you how to make one of these out of one of these. This is a sample worked up laminate piece. You could use any thin plastic about 1 to 2 millimeters thick. So I cut my piece of laminate to size, I rounded the corners, and I've also rubbed the edges down on a piece of sandpaper because some of these laminate samples can have razor sharp edges. So that's roughly going to be modelled on that one, and I've already drawn freehand my little square cutouts marked with an X, and for the saw edge like that I've started marking them there freehand. Don't think you need to do precision marking, and then you can cut that out with a hacksaw. So to make the cuts I'm using a mini hacksaw with very fine teeth, and I'm making alternative cuts progressing along here. And the next one, and so on all the way along. And I've got a piece of plywood backing the laminate because otherwise it'd be flapping about, and we don't want to fracture and break off any of these teeth. Now for the other side, this is a bit more tricky because we can't cut like that. We've got to cut down, down, and then somehow cut across to take out every other notch. Each of these vertical cuts is about 8 millimeters apart, and I've drawn a line on the laminate there about 8 millimeters down, so we're cutting out roughly 8 millimeter square pieces. Now we've cut down there and cut down there, and I'll need to somehow cut across there. So one way of doing it is to do a diagonal cut and the same the other side. So that still leaves a bit sticking up there, which you can improve on by like this. Or you can simply leave it. It doesn't have to be a perfect shape as long as you get a substantial notch out every other one. So here's the finished adhesive applicator in action. Quite an even coating. Something simple now, how to improvise a punch to punch a hole through this piece of leather or some other softish sort of material. I'm going to use a nut and bolt to do the punching. So there's the nut. I've marked the leather there. That's where I want to put my hole. That's the centre of the hole. So you focus on that circular hole there and practice putting the leather over it so that your mark on the leather is exactly over the hole in the nut. Hold the leather in place, put the bolt part exactly over your mark, hold it down tight and hit it with the hammer. And there's your hole. It obviously wrecks the nut and bolt. You can't use them as a fastener anymore, but you could probably punch out some more holes like that if you wished. Now you can sometimes successfully do it in very, very thin tin plate. I had to have 2 goes at that, but eventually it did punch it through clean. The only thing is that's a bit rough there, so you have to find a way of smoothing that off. But it could answer your requirement to get a hole quickly. I have tried punching in aluminium. This aluminium is about 2 millimeters thick, and whilst it wasn't too much effort to punch that as far as it's gone, it wouldn't go any further. So what would you do in this case? You've got a drain that's a bit blocked up and you want to put your hand down there to see what's there and get some stuff out, but you haven't got a long protective glove to go all the way up your arm. Here's an improvisation. This is a polythene sleeve which you can double over like that, and that makes quite a good long glove. So here I am all set up. I've doubled back the sleeve, held it in place with some good old PVC tape. I should add that you could use a strong polythene bag as long as it's deep enough to go all the way up your arm. Let's see what we can find. So you get the idea. There you are then. That's another collection of DIY tool improvisations. I hope you found some of the ideas useful for your kind of work, and if you like my videos you can subscribe to my channel and get automatic notification when new videos are launched. To do that, just click on the circular icon appearing on the left now. Otherwise you can watch some of my other videos by clicking on one of the rectangular icons appearing now. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.